Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtatusha Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtatusha Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. All glories to the sum of devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the sum of devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the sum of devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 4, The Process of Creation, text number 15. Yat Kirtanam, Yat Smaranam, Yad Ikshanam, Yad Vandanam, Yach Travanam, Yad Arhanam, Lokasya Sadyo Vidhunoti Kalmasham Tasmai Subhadra Shravase Namo Namaha Yat Kirtanam Yat Smaranam Nirikshanam Yad Vandanam Yat Shravanam Yad Arhanam Lokasya Sadyo Vidhanoti Kalmasham Tasmai Subhadra Shravase Namo Namaha Yat Kirtanam Yat Smaranam Yadikshanam Yad Vandanam Yat Shravanam Yad Arhanam Lokasya Sadyo Vidhanoti Kalmasham Tasmai Subhadra Shravase Namo Namaha Yat Kirtanam Yat Smaranam Yadikshanam Yad Vandanam Yat Shravanam Yad Arhanam Lokasya Sadyo Vidhanoti Kalmasham Tasmai Subhadra Shravase Namo Namaha. Please repeat. Yat Kirtanam Yat Smaranam Yadikshanam Shravanam Yad Arhanam Lokasya Sadyo Vidhanoti Kalmasham Tasmai Subhadra Shravase Namo Namaha. Kirtanam Yat Smaranam Yadikshanam Yad Vandanam Yat Shravanam Yad Arhanam Lokasya Sadyo Vidhanoti Kalmasham Tasmai Subhadra Shravase Namo Namaha. Yat Kirtanam Yat Smaranam Yadikshanam Vandanam Yat Shravanam Yad Arhanam Lokasya Sadyo Vidhunoti Kalmasham Tasmai Subhadra Shravase Namo Namaha. Yat kirtanam yat smaranam yadikshanam. Yad vandanam yad shravanam yadarhanam. Lokasya sadyo vitunoti kalmasham. Tasmai subhadra shavase namo namaha. Yat, whose, kirtanam, glorification. Yat, whose, smaranam, remembrances. Yat, whose, ikshanam, audience. Yat, whose, vandanam, prayers. Yat, whose, shravanam, hearing about. Yat, whose, arhanam, worshipping. Lokasya, of all the people. Sadhyaha, forthwith. Vitunoti, specifically cleanses. Kalmasham, effects of sins. Tasmai, unto him. Subhadra, all auspicious. Shravase, one who is heard. Namaha, namaha, my due obeisances again and again. Oh, it changed it. And mine is combined. It's changed. That's actually the most recent version. What they have on video is the most recent. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Let me offer my respectful obeisances unto the all-auspicious Lord Sri Krishna, about whom glorification, remembrances, audience, prayers, hearing, and worship can at once cleanse the effects of all sins of the performer. Purport. The sublime form of religious performances is to free oneself from all reactions of sins is suggested herein by the greatest authority, Sri Shukadev Goswami. Kirtanam, or glorifying the Lord, can be performed in many ways, such as remembering, visiting temples to see the deity, offering prayers in front of the Lord, and hearing recitations of glorification of the Lord, as they are mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam or in Bhagavad Gita. Kirtanam can be performed both by singing the glories of the Lord in accompaniment with melodious music, and by recitation of scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita. The devotees need not be disappointed in the physical absence of the Lord, thinking they are not associating with Him. The devotional processes of chanting, hearing, remembering, etc., either all or some of them, or even one of them, can give us the desired result of associating with the Lord by discharging the transcendental loving service of the Lord in the above manner. Even the very sound of the holy name of Lord Krishna or Rama can at once surcharge the atmosphere spiritually. We must know definitely that the Lord is present wherever such pure transcendental service is performed, and thus the performer of offenseless kirtanam has positive association with the Lord. Similarly, remembrance and prayers can give us the desired result if they are properly done under expert guidance. One should not concoct forms of devotional service. One may worship the form of the Lord in a temple or in a mosque or church. In a temple, or one may impersonally offer the Lord devotional prayers in a mosque or church. One is sure to get free from the reaction of sins, provided one is very careful about not committing sins willingly in expectation of getting free from the reaction of sins by worshiping in the temple or by offering prayers in the church. This mentality of committing sins willfully on the strength of devotional service is called namno baladya sihi papa buddhihi, and is the greatest offense in the discharge of devotional service. Hearing, therefore, is essential in order to keep oneself strictly on guard against the pitfalls of sins. And in order to give special stress to the hearing process, the Goswami invokes all auspicious fortune in this matter. Om Agyana Timirandasya Gananjana Shalakya Chakshu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Putali Swayamurpa Kadahmayam Dedati Svapadantikam Vandi Ham Shri Guru Shri Tapatakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raganatam Vidam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Prijna Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamsha He Krishna Karuna Sindhudina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Damostute Tapta Kanchara Gorangi Radhi Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanustute Devi Pranamami Hare Priye Vanchakapta Tubhya Shakripasan Nubhya Vachapatita Nam Pamilem Vyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo Namaha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Putale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Iti Namane Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Putale Shrimati Bhaktivedanta Swamini Iti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prasharni Nirvishesha Shunyavani Pashtati Adhishtarni Bhutayar Mahadbiri Maf Puror Vibor Nirdamaya Shiti Amusha Purashab Bhunkti Gunan Shudasha Atmakaha Sonam Krishista Bhagavan Vachamsime. So yat kirtanam yat smaranam yadikshanam yat vandanam yashtravanam yararhanam lokya sasadhu vidanoktu kalmasham tasmai subhadra shavase namo namaha. The poetry of the Bhagavatam is very beautiful here. It's a very wonderful verse. I remember reading this for the very first time, and this last line is repeated. This tasmai subhadra shavase namo namaha. It's repeated in four verses and three more verses in these prayers. That Shukadeva Goswami, as Prabhupada says at the end, he says, in order to give special stress to the hearing process, the Goswami invokes all auspicious fortune in this matter. Simply put, his line, Tasmai Subhadra Shavase Namo Namaha, I mean, simply by hearing of him, Vishnu Krishna, simply by hearing of him is Subhadra. It's auspicious in and of itself, just like Shrinvatam Savakata Krishna Punya Shavana Kirtanaha. Simply hearing about the glories of Krishna, about the narration of Krishna, the names of Krishna, the qualities of Krishna, and of Krishna's devotees, in and of itself is auspicious. And it purifies, as is stated in this verse, all these processes, the Kirtanam, Smarnanam, Ikshanam, Vandanam, Shavanam, Arhanam, all of these things, they lokasasa duvidinoti kalamasham. They purify, they can at once purify one of all sinful reactions. And who can they purify? Kirata Hunandra Pulinda Porkasha, Abira Shamba Yavana Kasadiyaha, Yene Papachayad Apashyashiyaha, Shudanti Tasmai Prabhavishna Namaha. They can purify even fallen and sinful races, such as the Kiratas, Hunandras, even Kasa races, even the Chinese. They can purify everybody. Prabhupada will often quote this verse from these prayers. And there's so many other similar verses in the Bhagavatam that come like this in different forms. So this how it's simply glorifying the Lord can at once relieve oneself from material existence. Shrivanti gayanti grinanti abhikshnasaha smaranti nandanti tavidam janaha. What is that? Taive nandanti tavahita tavakam bhava pravaho paramam padam bhujam. That the same thing is repeated just in different language. That this gayanti, grenanti, hearing, chanting, remembering about all of these, for one who executes these processes of devotional service, Queen Kunti says, they definitely, without a doubt, see the end of the repetition of birth and death. Similarly, the demigods in the 10th canto, again a famous verse, Shrinvan Grinan Smarasmayam Shichintiyan Namani Rupani Shamangarani Te Kriyasu Yastva Sharanara Vindur Avishta Chitana Bhavaya Kalpate. Same thing repeated in different language. Language is similar actually. This here Shrinvan Grinan Smarasmayam, remembering, chanting about, etc. All these processes, point is slightly different over there, but the essence is the same. They say one who executes these things, even though they're engaged in this world, simply put, they're acting on the transcendental platform. So Shukadeva Goswami in Guru Parampara is giving the same understanding. The Bhagavatam gives the same understanding in different places. Practically, in one sense, the full essence of the Bhagavatam is contained in the 10th canto, obviously. But philosophically speaking, if you just examine the first canto, second chapter of the Bhagavatam, all the philosophy you need to know is contained within that chapter in a nutshell form, more or less. And the other sections of the Bhagavatam, they just elaborate, or they put that same knowledge in that chapter in different ways, in different understanding, and in different lights, and bringing out more detailed points, and sometimes condensing it down more. So the Bhagavatam is bringing out these points. So, getting into Srila Prabhupada's purport on this verse, so immediately, Srila Prabhupada emphasizes that, or this point of freeing oneself from all sinful reaction. Srila Prabhupada says, the sublime form of religious performance is to free oneself from all reactions of sins is suggested herein by the greatest authority, Sri Shukadev Goswami. Kirtanam, or glorifying the Lord, can be performed in many different ways, such as etc. like this: remembering, visiting temples to see the deities, offering prayers in front of the Lord, and hearing recitations of glorification of the Lord as they are mentioned in the Bhagavatam or the Gita. And he continues that Kirtanam means twofold things. It can be performed both by singing the glories of the Lord in accompaniment with melodious music and by recitation of scriptures like Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita. So, this Kirtanam process is the all-auspicious mode of religious performances for that age. It's glorified in so many different ways. And it's specifically the recommendation for this age of Kali, this Kirtanam, which is very easily executed. There are so many different limbs of devotional service, but they're all to be dovetailed with this process of Kirtan, which is performed in so many different ways. As Srila Prabhupada is saying here, he's hearing recitations of glorification of the Lord, as they're mentioned in the Shastras. It can be performed both by, you could say, stereotypically or conventionally known as, both by singing with melodious music and by recitation of the scriptures. And Srila Prabhupada, he says in one letter that the definition of kirtan should also not be understood to be so narrow, or we shouldn't understand Kirtan or Sankirtan so narrowly. We also understand the distribution of this knowledge is also a form of Kirtan. As is said here in one way, just as hearing scriptures, speaking scriptures, and Srila Prabhupada even says here, the recitation of scriptures, is a form of Kirtan, and the chanting of the holy name set to melodious music is also a form of Kirtan. Actually, if you see, there's one recording of Srila Prabhupada, so the Bhagavatam itself is poetry, but it can also be sung. You see, Srila Prabhupada, traditionally these sorts of prayers are chanted, these stutis or stotras, are chanted with the Vedic meter, but there's recordings of Srila Prabhupada of him singing actually the prayers of Queen Kunti, and also there's one recording of him, Srila Prabhupada, singing these prayers as well. So there are many different forms and modes of performing kirtan. And the kirtan not only purifies one of all sins, it's also very attractive. It's all attractive because it's the line Tasmai Subhadra Shafasya Namo Nama. It's Subhadra. It's all auspicious. It's radiant like the brilliant moon, and it attracts everybody, whether you have knowledge of it or they don't. And you see this practically. People come to the temple. And this process, specifically, there's so many different things in Krishna consciousness that people are attracted to. Namely, prasadam is definitely one, but particularly this kirtan is very attracted to people. It captivates the mind, both of devotees and non-devotees, because the holy name is all attractive. So, Srila Prabhupada, he says, so just skip around a little to connect the point. So he makes this very important. I remember reading this very vividly for the first time. Even the very sound of the holy, even the very sound of the holy name of Lord Krishna or Lord Rama can at once surcharge the atmosphere spiritually. So that place, that's what may otherwise be known as a pilgrimage of crows, what is otherwise known as the hell of New York City subways, becomes an auspicious tirtha by way of the chanting of the holy name. And by the chanting of the holy name, not only those people who hear the chanting of the holy name, but those people who go to a place where the holy name was chanted, where the Sankirtan Yoga took place, they're all purified. They get some sort of purification. So this immediately, just by the invocation, by invoking the holy name of Krishna, Rama, etc., one immediately surcharges the atmosphere spiritually, and it can be felt practically. People who come to, just like I was speaking yesterday to one of our guests, and he was saying it's practically felt when people come to our temples. There are so many different temples across the U.S. and across the world, speaking practically. There are so many different religious denominations, and even within the scope of Hinduism hodgepodge, there are so many different demigod temples, and still, too, there are so many different Vaishnava temples, and some bona fide, some bogus. But particularly, you see it that our temples are marked by this process of kirtan. Because the names of Lord Krishna and Lord Rama are resounding within our temples and are practically the basis of the temple, practically speaking, there's a certain or as Srila Prabhupada he himself says, it's at once surcharged spiritually. There's a current of life in the temple. And you see this process of chanting the holy name, process of conducting kirtan both musically and holding classes on the Bhagavatam, having kirtan in this way, as well as going out and distributing this knowledge. This kirtan, because again, it's the Yuga Dharma as well, that factor is there, but it surcharges that temple in our temples with this spiritual current. And it can be practically seen that a temple, those temples who were, those temples where kirtan is very prominent in many different forms of classes, in forms of set to musical accompaniment, in terms of distribution of Srila Prabhupada's books and Harinam Sankirtan. There's a markedly different atmosphere in these temples compared to those temples which don't have so much kirtan. Something may be going on there. They may have some deities, this and that. They may be following some limb of devotional service. But specifically this limb of kirtan, which is all important, it surcharges a place spiritually. So, and there are many instances of that, at least within our own temples, within history I could find. So obviously, it's popularly known, Srila Prabhupada. In some temples, he was particularly in India, he was very much insistent on having kirtan regularly, or kirtan going, ongoing kirtan, continuous kirtan. Just as in Vrindavan, he expressed a desire to have non-stop 24-hour kirtan as another local temple was doing for so many years. And so eventually, anyway, that history is very much well known. So too in Bombay, Giriraj Swami, he tells the story. In 1977, when Srila Prabhupada was manifesting the pastimes of becoming sick, very ill, Mr. Sethi was in Bombay, and he had a group of friends who came to the temple one day and did kirtan for 24 hours, and chanting Hare Krishna and different bhajans like that. And Srila Prabhupada heard that kirtan, and Giriraj Swami here recounts, he began shedding tears, saying, "This kirtan is so nice, and that our men should also do like this." And then and Srila Prabhupada requested Giriraj Swami for the devotees there in Bombay to have 24-hour kirtan for the Bombay temple. And the Bombay temple, I mean, at that time, it was a pretty big temple. Within India, it was a sizable temple, but it wasn't like it is today. It was quite strapped for manpower. Giriraj Swami recounts he was thinking, how are we going to do this? Already we can't allocate people to the needed services, and Srila Prabhupada wants somebody to be assigned, or devotees assigned to having kirtan 24 hours a day. So anyway, without condensed version, he tells the story that he expressed that to Srila Prabhupada, and Srila Prabhupada said, well, at least on Sunday we could do 12 hours of kirtan. And so anyway, somehow Giriraj Swami, he made that work. So anyway, my point is that so Srila Prabhupada expressed this desire, at least in some centers, to this kirtan to be made very prominent in the temple. And at least within all temples, Srila Prabhupada made it prominent by institution of the morning program, Mangalarti, greeting the deities, Guru Puja, and the following kirtan, as well as instituting formalized classes on the Srimad Bhagavatam, which previously weren't even there in the Gaudiya Mat. They would just hold they would have Ishtagoshtis, not as we have them, but sort of a somewhat more informal sort of group meeting where topics of the Bhagavatam, topics of philosophy and tattva are discussed, and different people's doubts are brought out. But it's not verse by verse spoken in an organized fashion like this. Srila Prabhupada although Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, he would speak like this, Srila Prabhupada specifically instituted this form of kirtan as being very prominent. So too, again, like I was saying, he also, within some temples in India, he emphasized kirtan, ongoing kirtan, because he knew that, although I haven't been, I've heard many devotees account, just as when you go to Vrindavan temple, because the kirtan is going on there, the atmosphere is so wonderfully surcharged. It feels like there's life within the temple. When kirtan is going on like that, people can very markedly notice it. And two, I've heard from different visitors through devotees of different visitors to Vrindavan temple, people very much like going to the Krishna Balaram Mandir because the kirtan is going on there. It's very attractive to people in general. So this kirtan prominently sets our temples, the temples of the Krishna consciousness movement, aside and apart from so many other temples and also religious institutions. So So like this. So this kirtan is given very much prominent emphasis, even more so by our acharyas than this process of individual japa. Prominently, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, if you study this poem of his Dushtaman, that he criticizes, although japa is there, don't get me wrong, he criticizes the propensity to simply chant in a solitary place, keeping the benefits of just reaping the benefits of chanting the holy name to oneself. More prominently, more what is emphasized is this process of kirtan, specifically sankirtan, going out and chanting, also distributing the knowledge is given to other people. Because by doing so, not only are we benefited, other people are also benefited. Therefore, this process of sankirtan, or this general process of kirtan, is more blessed than the more solitary form of japa. Although japa is there, and obviously we make a vow to chant a certain number of rounds of japa, specifically this process of going out and giving, this loud chanting of the holy name is given, as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself did, is very prominent in this age, is very much emphasized by the Bhagavatam and in this age of Kali. So, Srila Prabhupada, he brings out this point at the beginning of this paragraph I just read from. He says, the devotees need not be disappointed in the physical absence of the Lord, thinking they are not associating with him. The devotional processes of chanting, hearing, remembering, etc., either all of them or even one of them can give us the desired result of association with the Lord by discharging the transcendental loving service of the Lord in the above manner. So Srila Prabhupada simply put, one can associate directly with Krishna by hearing, by chanting, by remembering. And a very good example of this is actually these prayers themselves. I don't want to get so much into it, but you see at the end, Shukadeva Goswami, he's praying, the language of his prayers, let me see, I believe it's, so there's a few, I'll just read from a couple. Shriyaf Patir Yagapati Prajapatir Diyam Patir Lokapatir Darapati Patir Gatishtandaka Vrishni Satvatam Prasidatam Me Bhagavan Satam Patihi. The language of this, and particularly how Srila Prabhupada has translated this, is very beautiful. So Srila Shukadeva Goswami, he prays, may Lord Shri Krishna, who is the worshipable Lord of all the devotees, the protector and glory of the kings like Andaka and Vrishni of the Yadu dynasty, the husband of the goddess of fortune, the director of all sacrifices and therefore the leader of all living entities, the controller of all intelligence, the proprietor of all planets, spiritual and material, and the supreme incarnation on earth, the supreme all in all, be merciful upon me. It's such beautiful language. He's praying, he's glorifying Krishna in so many different, reciting so many different names of Krishna, actually, Shriya Patir, Yoga Patir, etc., like this. And at the end, he's saying very, almost as if heartfelt, not to use a sentimental term, but very personally, he's praying, Prasidatam me Bhagavan Satam Patihi. May that Lord please be merciful upon me. Lord Krishna, please be merciful upon me. And then again, later he cites a direct prayer. Oh, they're all direct, but so again, this directly asking for Lord Krishna's mercy. Bhutir mahadbhir imaf puror vibor nirmaya shiti yadamushi purashaha bhunkti gunan shudashatmakaha solang krishishta bhagavan vachamsime. Bhagavan vachamsime. Similar statement, but using very different language. He again prays, may the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who enlivens the materially created bodies of the elements by lying down within the universe, and who in his Purusha incarnation causes the living being to be subjected to the 16 divisions of material modes, which are his generator, and here's the point, be pleased to decorate my statements. So Shukadeva Goswami, he's very feelingly and very lovingly praying to Lord Krishna within these verses. And you can actually feel it within these verses. And connecting this, Srila Prabhupada is saying, so he's not disappointed in the physical absence of the Lord. Shukadeva Goswami, superficially, he's sitting on front of an assembly of sages, and prominently Maharaj Parikshit. But within his heart, he's always associating with the Supreme Lord. He's always wrapped in ecstasy like that. Therefore, as Srila Prabhupada is saying here, the process of chanting, hearing, remembering, etc., can give us the desired result of association with the Lord by discharging the transcendental loving service. So this is practically seen in an example of Shukadeva Goswami here, as well as so many different people, just like Again, what is it? A little bit different, but the same mood, the same heartfelt prayers. You can see Srila Prabhupada offering his prayers upon the Jaladuta, and a very similar manner, offering heartfelt prayers into the Lord Krishna. Superficially, at least let's say materially, he was on a boat in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. And even in one sense, you could take it, he's on board, he's within the material world. Srila Prabhupada, he's come down from the spiritual world, but still, he was never separate from Krishna, even for a moment, because he was always, well, the pure devotee always bears the Lord within his heart, but also he was associating with Krishna by hearing, chanting, remembering, and glorification like this. So, continuing on this point, so Srila Prabhupada, he says, continuing where I left off the surcharge spiritually, he says, we must know definitely that the Lord is present wherever such pure transcendental service is performed. And the performer of such offenseless kirtanam has positive association with the Lord. So the same point, Srila Prabhupada, it seems indirectly, or in one sense he's quoting here, this verse, Naham titishtami vaikunte yoginam hrida yeshuva tatra tishtami narada yatra gayanti madbhaktaha. So Krishna himself speaks to Narada Muni. He says, I am not in Vaikuntha nor in the hearts of the yogis. I remain where my devotees engage in glorifying my activities. Therefore, it's to be understood that the Supreme Personality of God does not leave the company of the devotees even for a moment. So that place which this kirtanam is going on, that place which is filled with this kirtanam, vandanam, etc., archanam, ikshanam, it's even said here, where that's going on amongst the devotees, Krishna is present there within that assembly, and he manifests. So Srila Prabhupada, he continues there, continuing on the same point, he says, here, one should not concoct forms of devotional service. One may worship the form of the Lord in a temple, or one may impersonally offer the Lord devotional prayers in a mosque or church. So interestingly, two different points. One I noticed just as we were reading this, he says, Srila Prabhupada makes the point here, we shouldn't concoct forms of devotional service. Obviously, then the effect of kirtana offering prayers will have an effect. But he says, so one is sure to get free from the reaction of such sins, even if one offers prayers impersonally to the Lord within a mosque or a temple. So these other religious, the Christians, Muslims, as they offer prayers in their respective place of worship, they're also becoming purified from their sins. It's interesting. And Srila Prabhupada often, as he's saying here, this was a common point he would make, that they do this and they get purified, but then they go back and then they commit the exact same things, exact same sins. So I'll get to that point, but I want to bring out this point of that. So impersonally offering prayers within the mosque or church. So we may go to a temple or we may go to a mosque or church and impersonally offer prayers. It's a very interesting point. So it's already confirmed within these prayers that the Lord is, at least within the version of the Bhagavatam, the Lord is Akila Sattvan Murti. He is, and again, the same thing, he has a completely pure, transcendental spiritual form. His form has nothing to do with this material world. And again, the same thing, just like we're learning now, Krishna is a person, God is a person, the very first verse. Namah parasmai purashaya bhuyase, stana nirodha lila. The first verse, the first line is the important part, that parasmai, the highest supreme person. His prayers begin from this point. So this, again, the same thing, this understanding sets us aside, and Srila Prabhupada is setting us aside here from all other processes. Whereas others, they have some sort of impersonal idea of God, and they may go to their house of worship, and they may pray for so many different things they may pray. Generally, amongst common society, it's taken that you come and you offer your prayers, and most people, they just not to say concoct, but they come up with their own prayers, usually praying for health of themselves, their family members, or for just like, we go to this farm to get milk, and it's a Christian farm, there's a little prayer book there. And I look in that quite often to see what's going on. I haven't looked in it recently, but if you open it up, it's all the same thing. It's, please please, Lord God, please pray for my, or requesting people to pray for like some sick family member, for some sort of passing a test, for getting some sort of job. Yeah, it was, that's I remember that very vividly when for Trump to become reelected as president. So many different things. So people are praying, but they don't know what to pray for. So therefore, property mentions here one shouldn't concoct forms of devotional service. Prayers are being offered. Some sort of prayers are there, but it's prayers done in an incorrect manner. Just as at least they're offering prayers unto the Supreme Lord. That may be there, but akama sarva kama va moksha kama utariti. Something is there, but if we offer prayers in the line of the Mahajans within the Bhagavat line, then we'll get the result we're actually desiring. Prahlad Maharaj, he says in his prayers that all these different aspects of material prosperity, this yoga, tapasya, bala, all the great bodily strength, very high, great beauty, great education, yogic mysticism, all these things actually don't have any sort of value. We can pray for these things and we may even get these things. Krishna may give these things to us. But if we get them, they don't actually satisfy us. Rather, our real self-interest elsewhere, Prahlad Maharaj says, Nate Vedu Swarta Katim Hi Vishnum. Our real self-interest is Vishnu, rendering service unto Lord Krishna, but people in general don't know this. So, by offering prayers in a purified manner, by following the examples of our acharyas, just as Shukadeva Goswami is doing here, if we study these prayers, we should remember when reading these verses that these prayers, what's being spoken here, are the pure, all of Bhagavatam is pure, but specifically these, is the pure, direct transcendental sound vibration that's coming from the lotus mouth of Sri Shukadeva Goswami. They're prayers offered by a Paramahamsa Vaishnava, a topmost devotee who not even practically from birth was constantly absorbed in Krishna consciousness. From the beginning of his life, he was a Nitya Siddha, eternally perfect devotee. So, the prayers of the Mahajans, by offering or reciting these prayers, Srila Prabhupada would make the point specifically that we can offer our own prayers unto the Lord, and that's very good. But specifically by offering those prayers of the Mahajans who have already pleased Krishna with their prayers, then we can derive it's a much better process, because those prayers, the ultimate goal is to please the Lord. These prayers that please the Lord. By offering these prayers, we know somehow, even though we may be impure, we can please the Lord somehow with a very beautiful recitation, a very beautiful offering, and we can come to understand and imbibe the spirit of the prayers. Just as you see, or it seems very prominent that Srila Prabhupada, at one point in his life, he very intensely studied the prayers of Prahlad Maharaj, because I'm somewhat going through those now, and if you look at the translations for all of them, Srila Prabhupada will quote from them, maybe not directly the Sanskrit, but he will quote those points so much throughout his preaching in the West. He just like a saintly person isn't sad to see when a scorpion or a snake is slain, and he very early recited that was a doubt in his mind, and when he saw his spiritual master like that, etc., without diverging, and so many different things, how people in this world, how one may make a very good arrangement, one may have the child may be under the care of the parents, and one may a drowning man in the middle of the sea may be, what is that exactly? One may be in the middle of an ocean and drowning. What is that? One may have a very good boat in the middle of an ocean. Yeah. But still, one is not a guarantee of success.
That comes that even a father cannot.
Yeah. Yeah, and a sick man even may have access to medicine, but it's not guaranteed to cure him. Similarly, so many different things. Srila Prabhupada very intensely, it seems to my imperfect vision, seems to have very much studied these prayers. And he said, in 1976, at the Mayapur festival, he said that each line of these prayers is so significant that it's, I'm just trying to remember his words, that I believe he said there that our acharyas have very much emphasized these prayers, and each line, if you study, so much could be brought out, and each line, each word is so significant. And so, the result of him studying these prayers is that he actually imbibed the mood of these prayers. This I haven't gone there. I don't know I don't know the Sanskrit for it. But this, oh Lord Nrsimhadev, I see that many saintly persons indeed they're very much interested in their own self-interest, and they go up to the hills of Himalayas and execute austerities there. But I am concerned, seeing the fallen condition of the people in general. I want to uplift them. Is the ultimate, you could say, mood or the central point of Prahlad Maharaj's prayers. And Srila Prabhupada, he was the personification of this. Practically, this is the central point of Srila Prabhupada's teachings. So this aspect of studying these prayers, different prayers of our acharyas, of the Paramahamsas, and seeing the mood which they imbibe, although in one sense, a lot of the prayers are similar in many different ways. A lot of the points, just like I was quoting the verse today, is very much similar to the prayers of the demigod. They're similar to the prayers of Queen Kunti. In one sense, this philosophical topics are repeated, just like generally you'll see, practically almost prayer in the Bhagavatam, there's some sort of glorification of how Krishna, he created the material world, and he's maintaining everything, and at the end, he destroys everything, and he manifests the material element. Something is like that generally in every single prayer. But each prayer has a different sort of mood and a different sort of intent behind the prayers. Just like if you see the prayers of Bhishma Dev, very short but very, very beautiful. You see Bhishma Dev's mood and his relation as another point. These prayers, they bring out they're a very personal thing because it's the devotee directly acting on and directly bringing out his relationship with the Supreme Lord. As what I was making the case with Shukadeva Goswami, you can see here. So similarly, Bhishma Dev, he says, may that Lord whose eyes are as red as the rising sun, kindly await me at that moment when I leave this material body. Something like this. And you can see such sweet relationship, actually. Even though Bhishma Dev, he was fighting with Krishna on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and he was piercing Lord Krishna with arrows. He remembers that in his prayers as well. You see the loving relationship between the devotee and the Supreme Lord there, as well as so many different things. So these prayers and this studying these prayers, they constitute not only it's Tasmai Subhadra Shafase Namo Namaha, it's purifying in and of itself. We can understand so many aspects of devotional service. We can just as it brings out the finer points of devotional service. So as well as so many different things, as one among many angas of devotional service. But so anyway, I got on a tangent. So. So, Srila Prabhupada, he was saying, so this point of impersonally offering prayers in the mosque or church. So, I was on this point of people may go to the church or mosque, but this sort of personal relationship isn't so much brought out. Some sort of prayer is there, but the prayer is stinted, or it's not in a perfect, pure manner. And therefore, the result of their shastras is that they don't have a pure. Some understanding of God is there, but it's an impersonal understanding. But specifically, the Bhagavatam, from the very beginning, it establishes that the absolute truth is a person. Particularly, and here the same thing is reiterated. Particularly, in the 10th canto, it said, the demigods, they say, Sattvam nachit haturidam nijam vavid, vijnanam agyana pita pamarjanam, guna prakashir anumiti bhavan, prakashate yasya chayena vaganaha. They pray to Lord Krishna within the womb that, oh dear Lord, paraphrasing, there's a very long translation, if you did not advent your transcendental form, then it would be impossible for anybody to understand the difference between matter and spirit, or what is material and what is transcendental. And Srila Prabhupada offers this purport. I quote often because I quite like his language here. He says, the appearance of Krishna is the answer to all imaginative iconography of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, just like you go to these houses, if you go to these places, they don't have a form. Some form may be there, some temples may manufacture a form, some more rudimentary systems of religion, they may draw some image of God, speculate some image of God. And still other places you see, they just forbid depiction of God altogether because they think it's impossible to know. But according to the Bhagavatam, we do know there is a form of God, and that's clearly given. So to finish this little quotation, Srila Prabhupada continues, everybody imagines the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead according to his mode of nature. In the Brahma Samhita, it is said that the Lord is the oldest person. Therefore, a section of religionists imagine that God must be very old, and therefore they depict the form of the Lord like a very old man, usually in the clouds. But in the very same Brahma Samhita, that is contradicted. Although he is the oldest of all living entities, he has his eternal form as a fresh youth. The exact words are used in this connection in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Vijnanam ajnanam pita pamarjanam. Vijnana means transcendental knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vijnana is also experienced knowledge. So Lord Krishna, he comes and he gives us jnana. He gives us knowledge of his form, of his glories, of his pastimes, who he is, what he does, what he's about, and what is his address, what is his postal code. He tells us everything. And then he also gives us vijnana. He gives us that process by which we can realize this jnana and just not simply remain on not exactly mental platform, but just on the stage of theoretical understanding. He himself gives in the Bhagavad Gita, Jnanam teham savijnanam idam vakshami yashishitaha yes gyatava niha bhuryo nyas gyatavyam avashishiti. He tells Arjuna, O son of Pritha, shall now declare unto you this knowledge, both phenomenal and numinous, or both material and divine. Thus, this being known, there shall remain nothing further for you to know. When we understand these two aspects of jnana and vijnana regarding the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his form, name, etc., nothing else remains for us to be known. So this same thing is reiterated in the same chapter. He says, Naham prakasha sarvasya yogam mayasma vrittaha mudhoyam namijanati lokamamajamavyayam. He is not impersonal, he says in the Bhagavad Gita. And fools think that he was impersonal before, and he has assumed some sort of personality, or that he just has no form; it just remains completely an impersonal force like this. But Krishna himself, within the jnana he gives in the Bhagavad Gita, he himself says that everything is coming from me, and ultimately he establishes that this form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and two arms is the supreme form that is to be worshipped. And how is it to be worshipped? Yad kirtanam, yad smaranam, yadikshanam, yad vandanam, yashtravanam, yararhanam. By chanting about, by remembering about him. And yad ikshanam, even by this word is used here, ikshanam, Srila Prabhupada offers the translation as ikshanam, meaning audience. Generally, is taking, if you see otherwhere, Srila Prabhupada translates simply as sing, iksha. In other words, Shukadeva Goswami is saying here, simply by seeing this transcendental form of the Supreme Personality of God, one can be purified of all different types of sinful reactions. Simply by sitting, Srila Prabhupada in one lecture, he says, simply by sitting in front of the form of the deity within the temple, and that's it, nothing else, just staring at the deity, that's it. You can be purified and attain transcendental existence of all sinful reactions. The process is so easy, so simple, and so sublime. So similarly to Yad Vandanam, Yashtavanam, Yad Arhanam, all these different aspects of devotional service, one can very easily attain to. Because up until, as long as one does not get, is careful to avoid this process of Srila Prabhupada saying, Namno Baladhyasya Papa Bhuti. He, by acting on the platform of purified devotional service without, as some do, that's as Srila Prabhupada is bringing out, by going to some sort of church, by engaging in devotional service in some form or another, but then going back and committing the same sinful activities. Or executing devotional service, you could take it in another way. Executing devotional service with the intent of reaping some sort of fruitive reward. Specifically, this process of trying to get atonement of one's sins, this namno baladhyasya papa buddhihi, it is the greatest offense in the discharge of devotional service. Hearing, therefore, is essential in order to keep oneself strictly on guard against such pitfalls of sins. And in order to give special stress to the hearing process, the Goswami invokes all auspicious fortune in this matter. So specifically, simply put, Srila Prabhupada is saying that this hearing of the Bhagavatam, a hearing of the process of devotional service, it keeps us on guard against pitfalls, simply put. Against, of course, somebody newly may be coming, and they may have so many different misconceptions and so many different misunderstandings. Just like, and so many offenses may be made inadvertently. Just like so many things are there, so many different offenses are there in the chanting of Hare Krishna. Somebody may come before the deity and spread their legs. Somebody may touch, wear red before the deity. There are so many different things. Unknowingly, one may offend the deity by offend the holy name. Offenses to the deity, offenses to the Vaishnavas, offenses in service, so many different offenses. But by studying the literature of our acharyas, we can be on guard against these offenses. And if we do commit these offenses, how to correctly rectify them. Not in the sense of nam no baladiyasya papa buddhi, rectifying with the intent that I'll just go in committing offenses, but purely rectifying them and advancing our devotional service. But two, as important not only for the neophyte, but is also self-same important for those who are engaged in devotional service. To go on hearing Shurin Vatam Svakata Krishna Punyashravana Kirtana. What is it? No, that's not what I want. It's by regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam. How does that start?
Oh,
Yeah. Nityam Bhagavata Se. How does that start? Oh gosh. So Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevya. Uttamashloke Bhakti Bhavati Naishtiki. By regular attendance on the classes of the Bhagavatam and by hearing Vedic literature, specifically the Bhagavatam, it's all that is troublesome to the heart becomes vanquished almost to nil. So this hearing process is important for the neophyte to become aware of the pitfalls, but it's also important for those who are practicing devotional service to cleanse the hearts, to become inspired in devotional service. Srila Prabhupada says in this is a semi-famous verse, he quotes in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami. He says that normal men, they become stout and strong by eating grains. So too, paraphrasing, if we drink the nectar of Lord Chaitanya's pastimes, and by extension Lord Krishna's pastimes, we also become stout and strong, spiritually speaking. Very roughly paraphrasing. And so Srila Prabhupada famously purports over there that if we don't read these books that he's given, we'll simply eat, sleep, and fall down. It's nectar, devotion, Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita prominently. So studying is not only important for the neophyte, but also for those who are practicing, and then ultimately too for those who have attained the topmost platform. We see Shukadeva Goswami, he's reciting Bhagavatam, or a better example, Maharaj Parikshit. He was already a Paramahamsa. He didn't attain perfection by hearing the Bhagavatam technically. He was a pure devotee from the very beginning of his life. We've already heard that. But still, he completely heard the Bhagavatam from beginning to end. Why? There was no need for him, technically speaking. He was already Krishna conscious. His destination was already guaranteed, technically. But pure devotees, they relish hearing the topics of the Bhagavatam. They relish hearing topics of Lord Krishna, Lord Chaitanya, and their associates. So this hearing process, it's the very foundation of devotional service. It's the beginning of devotional service, continuing from the very neophyte stage all the way up to even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu every day, or at least every day or every night, he would hear topics of Krishna recited by Swarup Damodar Swami Ramananda Roy specifically, relishing those like this. So this hearing process is very easily executed, is very joyfully executed. All these things, Kirtanam, Smarnam, Ikshanam, Vandanam, Shravanam, Arhanam, there's no difficulty in any of these things. It's very, very difficult. I mean, it's very, very easy. Anybody can chant Hare Krishna. Anybody can think of Krishna. That one may be a little bit more difficult regularly. Anybody can go before the deity and simply see him. Anybody can offer these prayers that are already given in the Bhagavatam, even in imperfect language. Anybody can hear about Krishna and Arhanam. Anybody can perform worship of Krishna. Anybody can perform some sort of simple worship in so many different ways. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Pacham pushmam palam toyam yomi bhakta prayachati. Simply by offering Krishna some little something, a leaf, flower, fruit, and water, and Srila Prabhupada will make the point, who doesn't have access to these things? So this is not very difficult. Sadhyo vidinoti kalamasham. This becoming free from all volumes of millions and millions of lifetimes of sinful reactions is not very difficult at all, actually. We just have to have the proper intelligence, be in contact with the pure devotee of the Lord. So I'll end my class there, and if anybody has any comments or questions or wants to bring anything out, I can take that at this time. Anything? Tyrese?
verse she said about in the Bhagavad Gita that Krishna fools think that he assumed
Yeah.
that form. That was like one of the main verses that like really like
It's very accurate, actually. It's
yeah,
like,
that
whoa.
made me have like firm faith that Krishna is like God, you know.
There's a lot of verses. A similar verse, or similar verses in the 16th chapter is like Krishna perfectly encapsulates the mentality of people are thinking. Because I mean, he's God, he knows. Similarly, in the 16th chapter, the same thing. The what is it? They say that this world is unreal, that it has no foundation, that it's all a product of sex desire, basically. It's a perfect encapsulation of like what, basically, I mean, material scientists especially, but particularly the whole mentality in the Western mindset of there's just one life, people come together, they have sex, then the child is produced. As all just, it's a perfect encapsulation. It's amazing how Krishna is able to do it. So many, even Avajananti Mamura Manushim Tanumashritam, and then the fourth, those people who don't take shelter of devotional service, this, whose intelligence is stolen by Maya, those who are miscreants, etc., and those people who take the devotional service, it's a perfect encapsulation. You see how Krishna is an intelligence beyond that we can even analyze. You see how he's so perfectly encapsulating these things. It's amazing, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
Question by Matsya Das.
Okay.
Hare Krishna. Matsya. Hare Bol. Mahatsaha Prabhu. Is somebody here?
Oh. Go on.
Hey, Mitravan Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah. So, it's Nashta Prayesha Bhadreshu. Come on, you should have known this.
Nashta Praisha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevya.
Yeah, that's the word. And the second thing I was thinking about is how people don't know what to pray for, I remember many years ago shooting books in this bogus rascal Sai Baba temple. And many people, they were giving us a donation and they're telling, see, I have back pain. Please pray that, please pray that our back pain goes away. I'm having an operation. Please pray that the operation is successful. So this is the kind of nonsense that these people pray for,
Mm-hmm.
They don't pray for anything real. And, what do you say?
Yeah, go on. I'm just agreeing. I'm sorry.
And I was thinking that, about this, when we perform the Sankirtan Yajna in a particular place, even after the Yajna is performed, the place is still pure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I was thinking that, yesterday, day before yesterday, we were distributing so many books. And then yesterday, we ran into this Mataji, who, the yoga girl, she was doing yoga and she was very careful about what sources she picked. And somehow or the other, she knew about Krishna because she wanted to read the Bhagavad Gita, but she wanted to find a bona fide version. And she looked online, she wasn't satisfied, and when she was in a thrift store, a hardbound Bhagavad Gita as it is was there. And she picked it up and she started reading it. And then that morning, yesterday morning, she was doing her yoga and she was chanting Om. And then she prayed to Krishna, because of the influence of Prabhupada's books, that she really wants to get to know Krishna.
Mm-hmm.
And then she walks out of her house, and because of the Sankirtan Yajna that we had performed a few days ago, she had found a book on the middle of the street. She found spiritual yoga. And she wanted to trace it out. Her husband somehow the other runs into us and calls us up. And she makes her way all the way to the convention. And she sees the Bhagavatam, she starts reading it, and she gets really emotional, And then she buys a Bhagavatam set, and then I kept her in touch with the Matajis, and she's really into taking Krishna consciousness up seriously, All this for the simple reason of the Sankirtan Yajna being performed, and the effect of it having, the Sankirtan Yajna having its ripple effects, So I just wanted to say that.
That's amazing. That's far out. That's amazing. Yeah. And yeah, that's crazy. In regards to like your first point is like I've also experienced it like a different way. Is like because of the hearing it people pray for all this nonsense, just like you're saying Sai Baba, they don't even know who to pray to because the hearing isn't there. There's no proper understanding. You know, I remember very vividly one time I was at Patel Brothers, and you know they have these like little like you know statues of Krishna, and like that, and like some Mataji like came up to me and asked me to bless her Krishna. It's like a completely not bless, but to pray for her and pray for her like statue of Krishna, and it's like completely wrong understanding. It's completely wrong. I tried to anyway. There's no knowledge. There's no knowledge. Therefore, I mean. Srila Prabhupada says we shouldn't concoct forms of devotional service. We shouldn't concoct, we should also become educated and particularly educate others how to do so, because otherwise, who's going to do it? So yeah.
So awkward for you.
Huh?
I can imagine you.
As like I was trying to like explain to her, but she was really like Indian.
It is really amazing. Like the power of prayer is actually like so powerful. You know, it's usually like, I mean, I sound like a Christian, but you know, I mean, even as a Christian, I remember like going to church in high school, and like you would like actually pray, and you would leave the church feeling like somewhat purified. You know, but often on books you'll meet many people. You know, the prayer is like a deciding factor, which finally pushes someone towards Krishna. Like you'll meet so many people on books who pray like sincerely to God, you know, and their minds will be blown when you meet them. They're like, oh my God, like you have no idea. I just prayed about this yesterday, you know, and the fact that here is a sign from God, it's like amazing that, you know, simply just by, you know, like just like some kirtan, that there's this prayer that it finally brings you towards Krishna. It's just really amazing.
And my experience is even within at least speaking from my own position, is like if you pray for something and you try to do so from a purified mode. For example, if like you're going on a book distribution and you're really praying to do something like to do huge or whatever it may be, praying for pure devotional service, there's almost immediate reciprocation. Sometimes it may be delayed, and obviously Krishna is not required; he's not obligated to fulfill it. But he's if Krishna, how to say, if you want to engage in pure devotional service and you pray for that, Krishna will definitely give you that facility. You see with people coming to devotional service, there's so many different instances. Just like, you know, a very good instance is Sankirtan Prabhu is coming to my mind. He was praying for to somehow understand God. So many people like that, and he took the Krishna consciousness. So many people are like that. They pray to know God, and then you know, somehow or other they get in contact with the devotees because, you know, Krishna is there and he'll fulfill that. So,
You know, coming from a, you know, Hindu background, you know, and specifically like the Smartha background, we were taught that always when you want to pray, you always have to recite verses. Like,
not your own, like
you can, after all that, you can throw in your own like your
that's
own
my
thing.
understanding too. Yeah,
But you have to chant verses. Only when you chant verses are your prayers effective. Now, I never exactly understood that until I came to Krishna consciousness. But in Krishna consciousness, you understand that your prayers are effective, or these verses that you chant are effective because they're bona fide prayers that were made in the different texts, you know, such as you know, there's the Vedas and the Puranas and things like this, and they have potency. And specifically in devotional service, we understand they have potency, like the Srimad Bhagavatam, like we're, you know, reciting now every morning. They have potency because these are prayers that pure devotees used to glorify, address the Supreme Lord feelingly, and the Supreme Lord had accepted those prayers and was pleased with them. And by pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one's prayers achieve perfection, right? And then Supreme Lord bestows benedictions.
yeah.
So it's the same principle. Is because Krishna is like this, that's why the demigods are also like that. I mean, you know, or anybody for that fact, that if you, any person, if you tell them what they they like to hear certain things, and if you say that, then they become pleased and they become more favorable to hear what you have to say. So, Smartha Bhagavan, my parents would explain that if you chant these prayers, then God will hear your prayers. If you chant these verses, then God will hear your prayers. And I never understood that, but by Srila Prabhupada's mercy, you can understand that Krishna's attention is grabbed by these prayers. Krishna's attention, one gains Krishna's attention. By his own mercy, by his own free will, by his own merciful will, Krishna becomes pleased by these prayers. And then, so even when we're advancing in devotional service and we want to execute some services, Chandanacharya, you can make a note of this. You have to chant prayers. Otherwise, the fruit will not come. We have to take that effort to, even though we are praying for serving Krishna in a particular way and this and that, the prayers are extremely potent. I was in my in the Saturday class, we were going through the benefits of reading Srimad Bhagavatam, and going through the last chapter of the Bhagavatam, just to kind of like emphasize. In the very last verse, Sutta Goswami states, this is cited by Sutta Goswami, that by offering obeisances to Supreme Personality of Godhead, one becomes free from all material miseries.
The last verse, the very last verse.
The very last verse, it says that how do you become free from material miseries? By offering obeisances to Krishna. By offering obeisances to Supreme Personality of Godhead, one becomes free from material miseries. We all have so many material miseries, And what we have to do is offer obeisances. And this namaha, you will see that the verse translates as offering obeisances. So, like we're chanting this more, Namah Parasmai Purushaya Bhuyase. Like this. So, these prayers have so much potency. And again, liberate us from all suffering and can also fulfill all our desires.
Yes. There's a few quick comments on that. It's just like some dastak where he sings Echar Gosar Kori Charan Badan Jahawiti Bignanash Abishta Puran. And Brigapati Prabhu famously, he emphasizes that he chants those prayers to the Goswami, and that's his realization. When he asks what's your realization, he gives you that if you pray the Supreme Personality of God, and also our acharyas, if you pray to them, that's there. And just quick comment that it's interesting. That's a very good example of how even within the remnants of Vedic culture, there's something there that's a finer understanding that you offer prayers to the Lord, and then you offer benedictions. You see that in the Bhagavatam, but it's interesting that's still there. Srila Prabhupada it feels like we just read it recently, but it's a whole canto ago now. Canto 1, chapter 7, Ashvatthama, he releases the Brahmastra, and Arjuna, he prays to Lord Krishna. It's only like 2 verses or something. He he glorifies Lord Krishna, and then he asks Lord Krishna, "Oh Lord Krishna, please tell me what is the source of this terrible light or effulgence or fire," or something like that. And so Prabhupada, he comments over there's the etiquette to first glorify the Lord, and then you would ask some sort of benediction like that from the Lord. You see any sort of prayer, at the end of this, just like I was saying, Bhutera Mahadbiriyam, this Solang Krishista Bhagavan Vachamsime is what Shukadeva Goswami prays for. He prays for that the Lord may decorate his statements. And so the same point you're making is he doesn't feel that he will have any sort of success without the Lord's mercy. Therefore, he's offering these prayers. So like that. Yeah. Yeah, it's really important. Yeah.
Prayers, it's like compulsory. It's like, oh no, I'm too dumb. You have to chant prayers.
It's not so hard, actually. In my experience, if you just say it every single day, it's just like if you learn materialistic songs, if you just listen to them, somehow you learn them. If you just say them, even once a day, you just somehow learn them. It's not it's like magic almost. Krishna somehow gives you intelligence to do so, even if you don't understand the language at all. So you wanted to add something?
Well, not add, but just
or
a
say
question.
something,
So just like this, we're talking about on the topic of prayers now. So in Krishna consciousness, we offer prayers, and Vishnuchitta Prabhu was making the point that Prabhupada also makes that point that that we have to offer, prayers from the Bhagavatam. And I think it's mentioned the demigods, they offer all these prayers
do,
and
yeah.
things, and then they ask the Supreme
Yeah.
Personality of Godhead for something.
Sometimes the material benefits, but there's
Yeah.
still offer.
Yeah.
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 You see that in the sixth canto when
Yeah, the sixth canto, Vritrasura.
Vritrasura, they offer these very elaborate prayer, and then they say something like,
Yeah,
I
they-
know you. We don't even
shouldn't
have
be
to like
asking.
ask you for something, but like still like. Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
So just to kind of just ask on that vein, because I mean, in Krishna conscious, I mean, hopefully, we offer prayers to Krishna and whatever, when we have some problem or we need some help or we want to do something. So there's time. So just kind of like, what should be like the devotee's mood in those situations, and how should he understand?
When you're asking for something.
Yeah,
in other
asking
words?
for something.
Yeah. So.
And then also too, just to kind of add on further to that, that's the first part. And then the second part is how do we like, what should be our mood also, like when we get what we're trying to get or whatever our objective of the prayers, or we don't, because those both times that happens. We may pray for something and then immediately like someone comes up and says exactly like what we're praying about, but then we may pray for something and then it goes exact opposite and nothing happened.
So so there's one very beautiful verse. Prahlad Maharaj says. He says, "Yasmin yato yarhi yenacha yasmad yasmayita yad uta yas tvaf parova bhava koroti vikoroti pratak svabhavaha sanshoti tad akilam bhavda surupam." So it may sound a little philosophical, but just bear with me. My dear Lord, everybody in this material world is under the modes of material nature, being influenced by goodness, passion, and ignorance. Everyone, from the greatest personality, Lord Brahma, down to the small ant, works under the influence of these modes. Therefore, everyone in this material world is influenced by your energy, the cause for which they work, the place where they work, the time when they work, the matter due to which they work, the goal of life they have considered final, and the process for obtaining this goal. All are nothing but manifestations of your energy. Indeed, since the energy and energetic are identical, all of them are but manifestations of you. And Srila Prabhupada, he kind of like gives a clarified form in the purport. He says, the words Yasmin yato yarhi yenacha yasmat indicate that all activities, whatever they may be, are but different features of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So all of them are created by the living entity and fulfilled by the mercy of the Lord. And he continues on like this, but essentially what is being said here, to put it in different terms, every whatever we're in, all these things, the time which we're working, the cause for which we're working, the circumstances in which we're working, all of them are manifestations of Krishna's energy. Therefore, simply put, in simple English, whatever's going on is due to Krishna's arrangement, in simple words. So whatever we may be praying for something, we may be in some sort of situation, something may be coming, something may not be coming, but the resolution is that whatever is happening, it's a manifestation of Krishna's energy. That arrangement is there because somehow Krishna is arranged. Immediately, sometimes we may pray for something, and I mean, often sometimes it's not immediately manifested, but we may see years later down the line. I have my own experience of this, not to narrate, but you pray for something, it's just not manifesting, nothing's coming about, and then something happens. Krishna makes some arrangement, and then you understand why that situation was there, because whatever, you had to go through something, you had to learn for something, or that just wasn't the time. Somehow, but the resolution, simply put, is just this sort of whatever is going on, just that faith in Krishna that he's taking care of the situation. The same Abhashya Rakibi Krishna Bishpashpalan. Whatever is going on, Krishna will maintain us, whatever it may be. Is that okay? Does that answer? Yeah.
Regarding the sound vibration, which is chanted by a pure devotee, and we understand that it purifies, like Prabhupada saying the purpose, spiritualize the
Atmosphere, yeah.
the atmosphere. But what happened when the same holy name, Mahamantra, is chanted by, Mayavadis or impersonalists?
There's a verse.
sinful
I don't know.
persons?
It's a Vaishnava. Yeah. So the explanation is given there that it's a verse from the Hari Bhakti Sudhotaya, if I'm not wrong. It said that just as milk is a very palatable substance, but milk touched by the fangs of a serpent becomes poisonous. So similarly too, when Hare Krishna mantra, for instance, is chanted by a Mayavadi or impersonalist like this, And person a little bit different, but my body specifically, or Vaishnava specifically is mentioned there, it becomes just like poison, and it has an opposite effect.
Yeah, I heard this too many times before, but I don't understand because it's sound. It is sound still. You know, at the end, it's the same sound.
Some,
Uh,
yeah,
maybe
go on.
the consciousness of the person might be different, and that is what influences the sound, the consciousness of the
Sound
person.
is there, but the thing is not just sound. The thing is Krishna wanting to manifest that in that sound. It's described in some places that, how to say, you could take a Mayavadi chanting the apparent holy name of Krishna. It's something like they're just chanting a shell of the name. There's no substance because Krishna's not manifesting there. Does that make sense? It's just, but when when Prabhupada is chanting Hare Krishna, is like his chanting is completely purified, and just by hearing his chanting, he can deliver so many different people. But a Mayavadi chanting, not only does it have no effect, it can mislead people actually because his understanding is completely wrong, and he can propagate that. So that's kind of like a succinct answer of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but so you say it doesn't have any benefit, no benefit.
Something may be there, but I
So what is
as
the
from my understanding is opposite because the verse is if yes, according to the verse.
It's opposite. Viparita phala.
Yeah. It's just like if you drink poison or poison milk. Milk is there.
for instance,
That example.
when Prabhupada explained the meaning of the holy name, the Maha Mantra, he says that it's the sound vibration that purify the heart, purify the mind. So obviously we are not, for instance, in my personally experience, I've been chanting, maybe in this committing too many offenses against the holy name, too many for a long time, chanting, and maybe being, without knowing that I was doing these offenses, and doing. Maybe I consider myself in the past as a Mayavadi also, and but I think that I get some benefit,
Well, it's different. It's very much different. I mean, if we're talking about like whatever, like like a Shankaracharya, like actual like like Advaita Mayavadi. Take for instance, take the extreme. They're chanting of Hare Krishna, and somebody who's coming from Western background who kind of has like a pseudo Mayavadi sort of idea. It's very very different because one is directly.
One is innocent.
One is it's the factor of innocence.
Innocence, Krishna recognizes the innocence. In innocent state, everybody has, impersonal Mayavadi, everybody has all sorts of misconceptions. But innocently having that versus, even after receiving the proper knowledge, they don't want to accept. They want
Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. After receiving the proper knowledge, they don't accept. That's the key point. There's like Srila Prabhupada's disciples in 26 Second Avenue. There's Keith at the time, Kirtanananda. He famous. I think it's in Miracle in 26 Second Avenue. He recounts that he started like propounding Mayavada philosophy in Prabhupada's class, and Prabhupada he roared at him like a lion. And anyway, succinctly, so his disciples at that time, or aspiring followers, let's say, they were contaminated with some sort of Mayavad philosophy. Most people who took up the Krishna consciousness during that time were. But it didn't inhibit them because the innocence were there. When Prabhupada practically explained that this is how it is, the Kirtanananda, he accepted it. So like that. That is a very good point. So, all right. We got to end. So, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vancha Kalpatru Vyascha Kripa Sindhu Bhava